Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. Do we have any apologies? I think we've got a full complement this morning. Excellent. Do we have any declarations of interest at this stage? No. Okay, we move to the minute of the executive held on the 14th of January. Is there anything within that that's first of all inaccurate? Or is there anything of requires a bit clarification? Councillor Garner.
It's in relation to the part in the minutes in relation to the working group, the climate emergency working group. I'd just like to update the committee on the progress, and also the makeup of the group was 6 elected members, 2 drawn from each political group, high school pupils, 1 drawn from each. The group will be supported its work by professional advisors and officers. I can confirm that the Chief Executive, Kenneth Laurie, has agreed to attend the initial meeting. Both the Council Leader, Cecil Meikle-John, and myself have confirmed our attendance as SNP elected members. Officers from the CSWG group have been identified for this meeting, but as yet I have yet to have a response from the Labour group, because I've just had an update from Councillor Munro, thank you. I believe it's her and Councillor Harris that will be attending that. So I would really appreciate an update from Councillor Bissett, because it's holding us back a wee bit in relation to the meeting. So if Councillor Bissett could maybe give us the 2 names, that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
What, is this for the climate change group?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, yeah, Robert.
Well, you need, I'll be one of them.
And I'm not quite sure who the other one will be yet.
I think if you can maybe advise maybe in the next couple of days. I think Councillor Garner's trying to get a date in the diary and trying to accommodate everybody. So just if it would be helpful, if we could, because we want to be able to push forward with that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Okay, nothing else on the minute. We move to item 4, the rolling action log. I think everything is up to date on that. I don't know if there's any questions. No. And we move to the substantive items now. This was a supplementary paper that came slightly later for obvious reasons. Mr Smale.
Thank you, Convener. As you acknowledge there, this was a somewhat hurriedly prepared report following the Scottish Government budget to get it out both to the Member Budget Working Group and this meeting for consideration. There will be a full section in the budget papers which are due to be issued today, which will crystallise some of the content here. So the first thing to say is, as you'll be well aware, it's a provisional budget. It's still to be approved by the Scottish Parliament, so I'm sure frenetic activity is taking place to that end, but at this point we've had no white smoke, so we wait to see what the outcome from that will be. Clearly, the budget this year has taken place under unique circumstances, which has proved ultimately to be very problematic in terms of the time frame within which we've had to operate. But as always, collectively, we get there. I think for the same backcloth reasons, the hoped for multi-year settlement was not possible to take place this year, but we are hopeful that that will kick in at the next round following the next spending review. As I note, para 3.3, just reflecting comments that are becoming more and more prevalent, the complexity of the budget does make it very, very hard to interpret, not least between years, but also intra-years in terms of the movements that take place. Anyway, ourselves and the various economists, etc., do our best to make sense of what is inherently a very complex document. I alluded to in my opening remarks relative to para 3.6 that the budget working group has already had an opportunity to consider what is effectively the very same report that you have before you this morning. An important framework that the Scottish budget takes place within is the fiscal framework, and the key elements of that are set out in section 4.1. Actually, the framework's due for review in the next year or so, so it'll be interesting to see what changes flow from that. More with an eye to post next financial year than 2021 is the pressures that are evidently coming through on two fronts, some of which has received some media consideration. One is the adjustment for the block grant, and the second one is differences that are coming out of the reconciliation exercise. Both of these will, as projected, place pressure on the Scottish Government's resources in future years. So it's something that we'll have an eye to in our considerations in terms of our best estimates of how the medium-term financial plan sits in terms of the grant that we may get. So in section 4.2, we'll move on to an overview, and indeed the opening comments there from Spice very much chime with the earlier comments I made at the front end of the report in terms of quoting the Economist commenting on how difficult it was to interpret figures. And specifically in terms of local government, you can see in the bullets at para 4.2.1 some pretty fundamental elements that would cause different outcomes, different figures to be produced. And flowing through from that in terms of the following paragraph 4.2.2, we have our annual difference in the interpretation of the figures between the Scottish Government in their announcement and COSLA. And you can see there are differences for both capital and revenue. And fundamentally, that distills down, not exclusively, but primarily to whether you include in the settlement, and this is particularly relevant to the revenue settlement, earmarked funds or not. And that tends to be the core reason why there are differences. Not the only one, but probably the primary one. As we note in para 4.2.3, the now familiar series of elements that are in the formal circular and letter from the relevant minister, the ring-fence funding for early learning and childcare, the restrictions on council tax, additional funding for the IJBs, which we basically act as a postbox for, comes into us and we pass it on to the IJB. And the last bullet there, the ongoing requirement to maintain the pupil-teacher ratio at the national level, not at an individual level. And zeroing in on the section following 4.3 in terms of the impact on the council. So the overall grant has increased by 2.7 million, but the adjustments for the earmarked elements change that. And in fact, there's a table we've included in the budget report, which as I say, is scheduled to go out this afternoon, which breaks that down and which I think you'll find helpful in terms of seeing just the makeup of that element. Relative to what we had assumed in the medium-term financial plan, which of course leads through to the estimated projected gap, now a firm gap, there's only a relatively marginal difference. So we're still talking about, in effect, 20 million for next financial year still to plug. The impact on the capital side of the house is more significant. There's been a significant reduction in the core grant. Now, the Scottish Government have announced that in the settlement, it's only 1 year they've provided, and they'll furnish us with the year 2 and year 3 figures in the summer. So that will be a natural opportunity to review the capital programme position then. And I suspect there'll be other elements that in the mix that can helpfully also be reviewed at the same time. 4.4 just picks up on the NDR, the non-domestic rates, where there are some changes there. I've not included in this report the more what you might regard as minor ones, but just focused on the headline in terms of the rate poundage. You can see in the appendix the letter from the Minister to COSLA setting out in somewhat more detail the requirements, and indeed the circular that sits behind that drills down even further and contains yet more detail. And there are layers and layers beyond that, which I won't bore you with. So the recommendation back at section 2 simply invites Executive to note the report.
Thank you, Mr Snail. I think we're in unprecedented times. It's a situation we've never experienced before, and I think that the budget situation is fluid for a whole host of reasons this year, none less than a minority government having to seek agreement with others. The impact of Brexit is something that we don't know and we're not able to quantify at this time, and it's something that will need to be rolled out as we go forward. There is also the impact of the delay of the Westminster budget and the assumptions that are having to be made by Scottish Government based on the information provided from the Treasury, and indeed based on the Government's own manifesto commitments going forward. So it is a very fluid situation, and it will unravel as time goes on. However, in setting, Scottish Government in setting their budget is seeking to protect those that are on the lowest incomes and not having them adversely impacted by the council tax. And this is where we are, as are most councils. Most are seeking to set their budgets over the next 2-week period rather than delay them. So I think we just have to take the best information that we've got, and that's what we base our budget on at this moment in time. There is likely to be adjustments that will come over the next few months, and Scottish Government's indicated that they would normally have a spending review in the autumn anyway, and therefore there may well be changes to come in year. So I'm happy to move the report. It is only for noting, but I'm happy to take any comments. Councillor Bowes.
Sorry, just checking it's on. Thanks, Convener. As Mr Smale has advised, that there are most definitely a number of interpretations of the settlement. To that end, I'll refer only to the statement in the report in 4.3, which is Falkirk Council Impact, which is obviously by yourselves. And obviously there is a revenue support grant that's been increased by 2.7 million. And as it said in there, it's 0.5 million better than assumed, because I know you do that. You're constantly doing that. With the introduction of the domestic rate in business in Scotland, it's according again to the report, 95% of businesses in Scotland will actually pay a lower poundage, and I would hope that that would be very much welcomed. Additional funding for early years to give our young people the best start. 96 million nationally for the IGB, which is obviously going towards the health side, which again I would hope would be welcome. And obviously the maintenance of the pupil-teacher ratio. These are a number of things which are core council services, and as I say, I would hope that all members would be very welcoming of these and this report. With that, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Munro?
Thank you, Convener. Councils are at the coalface. We're the people closest to our communities. And as Brian Smale said in his report, this amount of money comes with all sorts of caveats and ring fencing. And in real terms, it's a cut. Not 1 year's cuts, but 7 years' cuts. We have lost to local authorities over the last 7 years something in the order of £400 million. And that means we are less able, and I'm sure everybody in the room knows this, less able to support those things that help and matter to our communities. And I think the most shocking thing of all is that the total amount for local authorities is 495 million, yet the Scottish Government are giving Ferguson Marine 500 million for 2 rusting ships that are many years past their completion date. So the repair or the completion of these ships is much more important than the whole of Scottish local authorities. I mean, they're getting far more money than we are for all of the Scottish for local authorities. And I feel that that's a shocking indictment on the priorities of the Scottish Government. I can't in all conscience feel that this is a good budget, and I suspect that my colleagues round the table feel the same, and I think we need to speak out loudly and clearly to say we cannot do our jobs effectively with figures like this.
Thank you, Councillor Munro. Councillor Bissett?
Thank you, Convener. I think it was a wee bit disappointing that we've actually had our capital budget cut by 2.8 million, and that aggregates to about 9 million over 5 years. We've had a cut over the past 10 years, 150 million, and we've got 76 million to come. So I had hoped, being an eternal optimist, that we might have received some additional funding, and perhaps with the to and fro at Parliament we still might see something. Councillor Munro makes a fair point about BIFAB and and Ferguson Shipyard. They were looking at 200 and 300 jobs to be lost, yet in local government there's hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost, yet we're still not getting an increase in funding. So just to quote Costler, local government has performed well across the period despite growing pressures on budgets. However, there is evidence that performance, satisfaction and system capacity are all beginning to show signs of strain. And I think that's true. I think everybody would say officers would say it's very difficult to try and make these savings year on year on year. So something will give at some point. So my plea to the Scottish Government would be to put certainly more revenue funding in. A lot of it is ring fence that we can't touch, and they're all commendable projects. But I think we need to be a bit better funded, and I think we've got to send that message to the Scottish Government loudly and clearly.
Can I just say that every government has ring fence funding, and it is usually around their particular manifesto commitments, none more so than the previous Labour executive and ring fencing. There's far less now than there ever was. Councillor Alexander?
Yes, some interesting points made so far. The two boats that have been built in Govan, for example, I mean, I think we've got to keep things in proportion. It's not as if we built 2 aircraft carriers, for example, that we can't get rid of and we're trying to sell. Also, we'll have to look at the settlement figures and the impact of 10 years local government cuts in England to see, for example, Liverpool, 63% cut in its budget. You know, these are real cuts. And they're done, they're carried out by a government that has basically washed its hands of local government in its current form. I agree that this is becoming a difficult exercise year on year, which is why we really need to change the methodology of how we operate as a local authority. The changes that have been made through the Council of the Future committee, for example, have been very welcome. They are transformative. We need more of that, not less. As for the issues that we face, the reality is that we're in an unusual position and a unique position simply because the government postponed its own budget. Now, the loss of the shortest lived Chancellor may have a further impact on that. I don't know. Maybe Councillor Monroe could tell us just exactly what impact this will have. Also, are we seeing a difference of policy opinion arise from the government with regards to a Chancellor who was deemed to be sympathetic towards public services against a Prime Minister that's as right-wing as we've had, and that includes Mrs Thatcher. The bottom line is for us that we have a very difficult position. We should remember as well that, as well as what we are responsible for, there's also £1 billion worth of consequentials in relation to the mitigation of things like the bedroom tax, the establishment of the Scottish Welfare Fund, the changes in the benefits that have placed Scotland at the forefront of a more humane approach to benefit entitlement. We've seen a significant amount of public money that otherwise would have gone to public services been made to try to address the poverty trap that has been set by the Westminster government. And you know, and to your credit, Lynn, and your colleagues in Falkirk, you rightly condemned many of the benefit cuts that have occurred. But the reality is that the Scottish Government has been left to pick up the tab for that, and that in turn has been passed to local authorities. I was sorry to see that the new Scottish leader of the Conservative Party was first priority is to equalise taxation between Scotland and England, which means that those who are at the top of the pay scale will get a pay rise. An immediate pay rise is the first priority of the Conservatives if they form the next government, and that's unfortunate because what we need is an investment in services. That's what we're trying to deliver. There's a whole load of additional monies, something like £150 million this authority has gained, for example, for new housing from the Scottish Government, the £70 million towards new housing. We can't ignore that money. We can't ignore the additional resources that have come for education, whether it be the money that's gone directly to the schools, or the additional money for early years education. Can't ignore that. 350 jobs from that particular policy alone created locally, and that's just in the permanent posts with regards to the fund that's available. That's not including the construction jobs that are created from what was the biggest boost to the capital programme that we've seen over many years. So it's not quite as black as it's painted by some of the speakers, but hey ho, you know, we appreciate the fact that the opposition have got to be seen to oppose from time to time. It'd be nice if they would join with us in campaigning for a better settlement, a better society even. And but we are where we are.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. Loyalty is an admirable quality, Convener. When it comes into blind loyalty, it becomes to be a bit more questionable. And I just wonder when SNP members of this council are stop going to be apologists for the government and start standing up for Falkirk and start fighting for a better settlement. We all know it is a failing government. It has many problems in education, low economic growth, and yet the settlement that it gives education, which should be allowed to be a powerhouse of economic regeneration, is getting strangled, as the Councilwoman Rose highlighted, to such an extent that one shipyard, I think it's in Port Glasgow rather than Govan, gets more than the whole aggregate of Scottish local authorities in the country. That is unacceptable. I'll be happy to join with Councillor Alexander and any other member in this committee to go back to the Scottish Government and make the case that we need more money to fulfil the role that local government has traditionally filled in Scotland. We want to fill it. We want to see our roads put into a better state of repair. We want to see our buildings renovated. We want to provide the services that people expect, but we cannot do it on the handouts that we're getting from the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government is making its own decisions as to where money is being spent, and unfortunately, whether David likes it or not, local government is too far down the pecking order. So I think it needs a concerted effort, and he will get support if he's going to say that he will go and plead with the new Finance Secretary for more funds. Every member around this will support him. It's not party political. But just to accept and to produce a whole litany of excuses, talking about aircraft carriers and all these sort of things, it's just so frustrating for the people out there who just want to see Falkirk councillors fight for Falkirk. I may be doing him an injustice, but I'm not sure that David once mentioned in that 7 or 8 minutes he spoke there. I don't think he mentioned Falkirk once. He spoke, as I say, he spoke about aircraft carriers, which was rather interesting, which as far as I know are not for sale. But however.
And similarly, you've spoke.
Sorry?
Similarly, you've spoke about
I've
things that are out with
Falkirk
as well.
I'm speaking about Falkirk. I'm speaking specifically about Falkirk and the need for Falkirk councillors across the political divide to come together and plead with the Scottish Government for more money. That's the only plea that I'm making. I'm not attacking anybody. I'm saying we should unite and make our case. I'm not miscalling anybody at all.
And I would put a challenge back to yourself, Councillor Nicholl. I would put a challenge back to yourself that having seen the Scottish Block grant from Westminster cut year on year on year on year, that you go back to your government and make a case for Scotland having more money. And that way we can make the case for additional public services because the pot is bigger to just
spend. These are decisions of the Scottish Government that is spent, and it is not giving local government a high enough priority.
Convener, 19.1. If we do go back to the government, as we are, and ask for more money, as we have done, and we get it, will you apologise?
If we get more money off the Scottish Government, I will be the first to thank the Scottish Government for realising that their first offer was insufficient, but they have seen the error of their ways, and thanks to the concerted efforts of yourself, David, Robert, Lynn, etc., on a united front for Falkirk, the Scottish Government have accepted that they made a mistake, and we get more money. Of course I'll be delighted.
And I'll be happy if you have your suggestions of where Scottish Government should take the money from in order to give it to local government. Councillor Nicholl.
Perhaps
I'm
not two
going-
rusting boats would be a good start, Convener.
And you just criticised Councillor Alexander for not talking about Falkirk. Councillor Reid.
Yes, just a couple of practical questions. It's an interpretation of, for example, the transfer of the 100 million from health to the IJB. I think we all are in agreement with that. It then goes on to say this restricts the savings councils can take from IJBs. I didn't quite understand how that was a consequence.
There was a formula initiated previously that you could not reduce the funding to your IJBs as it was from the previous year. That you had to maintain it at the level of funding you gave. In this case, it would be 1920. So you wouldn't be able to reduce that,
Right.
therefore limiting the savings to be able to be taken.
Right. I still don't understand, but I'm maybe not quite waking up.
Councillor Smale, Councillor Smale, beg your pardon. Mr Smale may be able to explain it a bit clearer.
And I'm grateful for the promotion.
I would maybe be hesitant on that one.
It is essentially, as the conveners described, it kicked in as a device to protect IJBs from the level of savings, I think, in some authorities that were being taken from them. And clearly, adult social care is a policy priority. So it's a simple little formula that basically says you take their previous year budget, as the convener says, 1920, and as a minimum, you've got to add on their share of the 100 million. And as long as any savings that you are requiring from them doesn't take them below that threshold, you're okay. And the savings that are on the table and reflected in the budget report are within that formula, but not too far away from the threshold, it must be said. So we, as things sit, are okay with our positioning relative to what the circular requires.
Yes, my question did pertain to the budget for 2021, so we were okay. And
we're okay with
what we have
this.
there at the moment.
With the IJB, in terms of the savings that they've come forward with, which are a value of 2.2 million, are consistent within that framework.
Okay. The second question is about the capital programme and the new 50 million heat networks account. Investment will go to ready heat networks. Do we have any such?
It's about developing a district heating system, is my understanding.
But it says with investment ready, that's where the money's going to go. Do we have any projects which are investment ready?
Mrs Geisley might be able to update. I know that we have a number of district heating system designs, but whether they're ready.
We have some projects based on existing projects. As you know, we have a district heating scheme at High Flats, so there's projects associated with that. And we also have a very significant level of project coming through our investment zone proposition. So, and I think I've mentioned this when I've spoken about the investment zone in the past, we don't necessarily need to get all the money from the city deal format. If there are other funds available like this one, then we will look to tailor some of the projects in the investment zone to this type of funding. So this is the first of these coming through now that we'll be able to align these two projects together.
It's just a pity that in connection with the flats, we let a contract for 4 million just 3 weeks ago, which might well have benefited from this, but you're either lucky or you're not, I suppose, these days.
But it does create other opportunities, particularly in Grangemouth.
Unless other local authorities are more ready than we are, of course.
Well, we need to make sure we're in the best possible position, and I'm sure that officers are working on that so that we can get an early bid in.
Yeah. The question about Westminster budget yet to be settled. Does anybody have any inkling as to whether Scotland will get more money or not?
there is no real intelligence coming through, is my understanding from Westminster at this stage. There has been a lot of talk from the Prime Minister around investment in capital, but until such time as they actually start to unveil their proposals, best intelligence is around the government's manifesto and what their spending commitments will then be. With a new Chancellor in place, that may well change, and it is likely that there will be a delay in the Westminster budget coming forward. And unfortunately, we have to just work on the best information that we have. I don't know if Mr Smale's got any further clarification around Westminster budget.
The only thing I can say is just quoting a few commentators, the economic commentators, who do think that there will be additional spending proposals and there would be consequentials, but there's two ifs there, so we'll just have to wait and see.
It is quite a bizarre situation where the next week we're about to approve a budget which will not really be the budget, hopefully. I just wonder how finance can react to those circumstances quickly, because it'll have to be a very quick readjustment, I would assume. You're already, what, maybe 2 months into the new financial year?
My understanding is it will take a little bit of time for the Barnett consequentials, if there are Barnett consequentials, to flow through. And at that point we will get updated figures, and Scottish Government have already indicated that later in the year they may well look at a further spending review, just as a consequence of the Westminster budget and what comes from that.
It didn't used to be unusual to have a supplementary budget, but in recent years it has been, and it's a strange one.
It is, and it is. This is a very unusual situation, and it's a very fluid situation, and there's so many factors, as I said, playing into this that we really just don't know what the consequences may well be. One of that is particularly around employment and the European Social Fund and everything that goes around with that, which does impact on Falkirk, and it's something that again that we're having to look to mitigate again with Scottish Government monies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. I wasn't going to come in here, but I'd like to thank Pat for coming in there with some sense to the debate, although it shouldn't be a debate yet, so I have got a question. But just some of the figures getting bandied about there are just ridiculous. I believe Councillor Munro says 2 ships are going to cost £11.3 billion, because that's what the Scottish Government's give to councils, local councils. So that's quite a strange figure for you to come up with. She also said that it's cut £400 million in the last 7 years, where Councillor Bissett says it was a cut of £150 million in the last 10 years. So that's quite a difference in figures there, Mr Smale. So I'm not actually sure what one of them is near the mark. I do think it is Councillor Bissett rather than Councillor Munro. But I hear them mentioning the Scottish Government's doing this, Scottish Government's doing this in big figures, and none of them mentioned the HS2 project, for instance, which is £106 billion, and probably none of us will benefit at all for that. So yeah, I think you need really. There's an ex-councillor actually stood up when he stood down and blamed Westminster, blamed the cuts to the block grant, and his very first hustings that he stood up to. So it's different when he gets out of the control of the group in here, what he can actually say, and another councillor who is still a councillor actually says that at a full council meeting as well. So I'd like some of the blame to be apportioned to Westminster as well as the Scottish Government, if that is the case. Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, what I said in terms of the numbers was that it was 495 million coming to local authorities and 500 million going to the 2 ships at Govan, a contract which Nicola Sturgeon announced many years ago at a cost of 97 million, and yet has still got to be completed.
Yep. Okay. Okay, Councillor Hughes. There's no motion or amendment here,
Oh.
so...
Well, I think since everyone has chipped in with, what,
Yeah.
with their views
Well,
and the
had
world
hoped
of
most people would have
finance.
wanted to have kept their powder dry for next week.
Well, I
but,
think there has to be a couple of points. I think first of all I should welcome Councillor Nichols' Damaskian, shall we say, conversion on the way to Holyrood. For the simple reason that it's nice to hear a Conservative saying that they're supporting local government, when in fact the Tories up till recently, their priorities would have actually reduced the amount of money coming into local authorities, but that conversion is always welcome. The other thing I would, looking at the situation, if the Conservatives were in power in the Scottish Government, they would actually enact, because it's a UK party, the Tories and also Labour are UK parties, we would be seeing the Tories implementing policies which are currently being implemented in England, which has led to the decimation of local government. And I certainly am very pleased that we have a Scottish Government which has mitigated an awful lot of the difficulties that local government has been experiencing up here. God forbid that the Tories ever get power in Scotland. The other thing that was interesting was Councillor Gardner's point about the HS2 being £106 billion. As it's a UK infrastructure project, as we're led to believe, Scotland could be in the region of £10.6 billion towards this project with no real shall we say, guarantees that HS3, if it ever came about, would actually reach Edinburgh or Glasgow. I listened to the Westminster debate recently, and one MP mentioned that Aberdeen alone would actually be paying £220 million. Obviously, we'll need to work out how much Falkirk area will be paying towards this HS2 project. Also, my other observation was that I was concerned by the comments of both Labour and the Conservatives over Ferguson Marine and also BIFAB, because in relation to BIFAB, it was the trade union movement and the Labour movement together that approached the Scottish Government for support in giving support to BIFAB. I am most concerned that Labour in Falkirk is actually saying something different from Labour in Fife. Now, I don't think, obviously there is a schism within the Labour movement, and I think that Labour really should be standing up for working people right across the whole of this country instead of trying to cause division. I basically am concerned about that because if support hadn't been given to Ferguson Marine or BIFAB, many communities would be suffering today without support. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's opportunity cost, but I'd rather be supporting communities in their hour of need than actually throwing them to the wolves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. As I say, that this report's only for noting. The next item is the capital programmes update. Mr Smale.
This is the final projection for the current financial year. We will, of course, produce an outcome report in due course. The table on the first page, bottom of the first page, summarises the position both in terms of the overall position and the movement since we last reported in December. The subsequent paragraphs take each service area, and you can see the bullets there under the main projects involved. I won't dwell on these. This is content, standard content in the report that's come before you. If we jump to 4.2, we actually deal with the variance. The little table at the top summarises the position into two two elements, and inevitably it's the slippage element that we want to focus in on. And the larger table at 423 lists the various components adding up to the 1.9 million. I think the very first item on the table is the biggest element with respect to the tender for Denny Primary School, which has been required to be put on hold on the back of the tender outcome. If we carry on to 425, we pick up on those projects where there's been particular movement and beyond predetermined thresholds, which inform the required particular update to CMT with a view to delving in a bit more detail as to the reasons why there has been that slippage. 4.5 picks up in the Housing Capital Programme, where we have projected underspend of a fraction below 4 million, and mirroring the format for the general services, we take each of the main spending blocks and give an overview of the position. And in going through these, you'll see there's ebbs and flows in terms of overspends and underspends, given the net position I've just outlined. 4.6 picks up on the resources for housing. That's essentially capital finance from current revenue, government grant, and the residue picked up by borrowing. 4.8, section 4.8, again a standard element, and just making the strong link explicit between the capital programme spend, or programmes spend, and the treasury position in terms of the net borrowing. And finally, the reserves, the two capital reserves, are picked up at 4.9, capital receipts and the capital grants, which are essentially section 75 loans, contributions. And the recommendations, 3 recommendations, all to note, are set out at para 2.1.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smale. I think that obviously the focus has been on trying to manage the slippage, but I think we're maybe starting to see some of the impacts that are maybe coming of our Brexit, and that the high costs of tenders starting to come in, and that is a concern going forward. But we do have to keep it into perspective, and what investment is being carried out through the capital programme and actually delivering on the projects, including the additionality that's given by way of capital funding around the early years programme in our schools. We are just about to go into a budget round where we will be reconsidering our capital programme as a whole. Therefore, I think this has been a helpful juncture to look at where we are and going forward, and indeed recognising there's still a quarter to go in meeting some of those particular targets. So I'm happy to move the report, the update report in front of us. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Convener. Hopefully the people will pick up, as I did in the first report. I particularly spoke about Falkirk through my entire report, and I intend to do the same again, rather than talking about other places. I know with interest, and as I think we've covered it in the past about slippage, the report and the detail that we're now getting on slippage, as much as it gives us good information, hopefully that will start to turn around. It has obviously meant that there'll be slightly less borrowing in the year for us. As most of you will get to know me, there is a positive in this, and that the Housing Capital Programme are spending 43.8 million, which is basically up a third from last year. Now, why is that so positive? Because one of the main parts of that is the elemental improvement works, which will be 1.4 million over budget. And it's strange to be happy about something that's over budget, but when it's talking about re-roofing, rendering, kitchens and bathroom replacements, electrical works, which are then improving the quality of the houses which we rent out to people, and therefore giving the people a better house and a better quality of life for the people. That has got to be seen, and hopefully nobody would disagree with that. That would be something that would be very positive in the year. It's almost year on year as well, because I think previous year, I think we were about 32 million for the housing capital payments, and we're now 43.8. It's a significant increase over the last 2 years. It's basically grown by a third. It's a massive movement, and that's all to improve on that side. With that, and again, keeping it very local, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any Councillor Reid?
Unusually, I agree entirely with what Councillor Boyce said about housing in particular and its contribution towards that. Something that's I know is very important to you and I is the Changing Places toilets, and 50,000 in the current year wouldn't get one, I don't think. I may be jumping ahead to next week, but is there a larger sum in the
There is still, within the IGIB a fund. I think it's at 250,000. It's still around it. I can't remember the exact figure. I've seen so many, but there is still a figure there available for assistance for Changing Places toilets that will be in. Yes, but will be there in the capital programme and ring fenced for that purpose.
At our briefing meeting. I was going to say Councillor Ritchie, it must be catching you, Mr Ritchie.
You're just trying to make me feel better, but
the application form's in the post. It's the slippage in the housing budget. It was explained there are delays with Wood End and I forget the other one, the Bainsford Day Centre.
Yes.
Will that be caught up fairly soon?
These are just timing issues associated largely with tenders coming back, which were higher than anticipated, so we went back out to re-tender. Wood End Farm was a design issue still subject to the planning process, so with these caveats, spend should still continue. It's just an issue of timing,
Okay. Okay. Are we happy to accept the report? Okay, thank you.